Let's watch this. Intel is falling apart. Intel is really not having a good time, with their processors being number one, not as good as AMD, number two, having security issues. Their graphics card turning out to be quite decent. So that's a plus, but you know, it doesn't look that great. So let's take a look. Gamers Nexus, by the way, great channel.
Intel's in freefall. It's collapsing. In the last few months, Intel has been very busy for a lot of bad reasons. Intel has floated the idea of stopping node advancement without major customers. It has halted construction of fabs that it's received tens of billions of dollars for in worldwide government funding. It's selling off business groups, outsourcing entire departments, and has filed 30 worker adjustment and retraining notifications, aka layoffs, across 5.
Wait, what? Intel will outsource marketing to Accenture and AI, laying off many of its own workers. Oh boy. Intel delays completion of first Ohio plant to 2030. Yeah. Welcome back, Jesse. Oh, this is bad. Well, I think I've read somewhere in the last couple of weeks that they stopped building their plant in Germany. They wanted to build one, but they stopped. When I remember correctly, I'm not 100% sure.
Of billions of dollars for in worldwide government funding. It's selling off business groups, outsourcing entire departments, and has filed 30 worker adjustment and retraining notifications, aka layoffs, across 5 states to remove 10% of its U.S. workforce, on top of the nearly 20,000 people who were either laid off or voluntarily left last year.
Whoa, wow. Yeah, they're bleeding out. I wonder what's going on. Oh my god.
And preceding the next round of layoffs already publicly planned. So it's not good. It's in what feels like a death spiral. That's not hyperbole here. This is all of these things that we're talking about today are very bad things for Intel.
Yes, and I think yesterday or the day before, I've seen a thumbnail of a YouTube video. Apparently there's a new graphics card manufacturer coming up. But I'm not sure about it. I haven't watched the video, so I don't know. I just have seen thumbnail and title, and that's what it's suggested. But if that's true, but I don't know.
And it ended July of this year by letting its employees and stakeholders know a few things. Intel let everyone know that after a long month of layoffs, they're not over. They also said that construction in Ohio is slowing. Operations in Costa Rica are shrinking. Plans for expansion in Germany and Poland are axed. The foundry pivot.
So it was true, yeah. Oh, yeah, this looks really bad for Intel. Like, really, really bad.
That had been both figuratively and literally bought into under Gelsinger's leadership will now be reversed, and the company's fate relies on a yet not existing customer who trusts Intel 14A enough to invest in it, something that not even Intel is confident doing enough on its own. So everything Intel is doing at this point looks like a complete collapse on itself. It has no marketable CPUs for at least the desktop space. It's just not a good reason to buy them in the space we're in. The fabs, as a result of that, have been shrinking because Intel was Intel's own biggest customer for Intel's fabs, and that customer, Intel, no longer needs as many CPUs as it used to. It has partially completed extremely expensive construction sites all around the world, including some that, as far as we know, will continue, like in Arizona, but others where Intel has explicitly stated that they are stopping, pausing, or halting, or intentionally slowing construction. And this is all in addition to Intel selling its own assets, stopping investments, as it has publicly stated.
Oh boy.
And this might help Intel stop the bleeding. We just wonder what Intel's game plan is when the bleeding is complete. Like when Intel is lying there and it has managed to stop bleeding out, but it can't get up on its own and no one's around. It's like, what's the plan here? Because
you know what's funny? If that graphics card would become so good that they keep the company running. That's literally what happened to AMD. The graphics card kept AMD alive, and then Ryzen came, and they kind of fucked up their graphics card division, but the CPUs were so good that they kept the company alive, and now their GPUs are and their CPUs are good. AMD is now the king, it looks like, at least to me. I mean, they have the CPUs and they have good GPUs. And they have the CPUs, I mean, they have the only CPUs that are actually worth buying. When was the last time you heard someone tell you buy Intel? The only thing about Intel that I hear when it comes to CPUs is negative things. And that's for over a year now. That's bad. That's really bad. Now, I have heard good things about their graphics card. But that's it. And they don't ship enough graphics card that it would keep up the entire company. Because the company is too big. Too big for its own good. Just like the government.
They need something after this period to continue to exist. And so at this point, with the slowdown of investments, it looks like there really won't be anything left. And we're either witnessing the start of Intel's death spiral, or we are witnessing, in the words of Intel's now CEO Lip-Bu Tan, quote, a comeback that will be studied in business schools for generations to come, end quote.
I can believe that this will be studied in business schools for decades. But if it will be, a great comeback or the downfall of the company, that can't be said now. We don't know. I think this will play out over the couple of next 2-3 years, maybe 4. And then we will see.
And that is one hell of a thing to say before we're anywhere even close to seeing the comeback part of that. That is very early to start counting those chickens. They are not even eggs yet. So we recently talked about how Intel feels like the only hope in the GPU market to bring some kind of balance and knock the incumbents around a little bit, even if it's not competitive on performance, just on price. That's still true. But Intel has at this point depressurized. It's in a state of free fall. It's stalled out. Intel's fabs don't really have as many orders from Intel's product side anymore because no one's buying them. It's sort of like when the flight attendants tell you that you need to put your own oxygen mask on first before you help someone put their own on.
Yeah.
Intel needs to help itself first before anyone else can be involved. But the problem is Intel doesn't know which side of the oxygen mask it's supposed to breathe from. That's the problem.
Thanks, Steve.
Wait, isn't Intel the chip maker thing? Yes, they produce CPUs. They were, and I think they still are, the biggest. But AMD came in, crushing it with their Ryzen CPUs. It looks like they took so much market share and their processors are so much better than Intel's now that Intel is dying. One reason for that might be that the company is just too big. They have too many people in the company that don't deserve to be there. The same happened with Twitter. That's why Elon could fire 80% of the staff of Twitter, and it just worked fine. A lot of big companies have that problem. They have so many people that a lot of them are completely worthless. And, you have to cut the fat.
We brought you this video with our NVIDIA AI GPU Black Market Investigation backer rewards for our 3-hour-long movie launching on August 15th. The backer rewards include our new Turn a Blind Eye t-shirt, referencing the phrase iterated by multiple on-camera sources when we asked of NVIDIA's awareness to export control circumvention. We also have new sticker packs, including GPU Shredder paper launch stickers and Black Market Nexus Smuggling Company stickers, among other items like our new GPU VRAM glassware with gold halo rim. We recently announced that we're producing a long-form movie diving into how a modern, high-tech black market operates, including interviews on camera with suppliers, middlemen, and users of AI GPUs. plus
Really?
discussion with smugglers. The project cost us over $100,000 now, and we need
Wow.
help to finish the investigative report. To help fund this effort, click the link below to our black market self-made fundraiser, sort of like a Kickstarter, and get exclusive backer rewards only available for the next few weeks, like
Wow. I'm impressed. I'm impressed by this. I'm also surprised that there is a black market. But not that surprised either, because of course there's a black market.
our bonus video content, group Q&A session with me, canvas print, and our physical items like t-shirts, glassware, and stickers. Thanks for your support in making this unique video a reality. And remember, check back on August 15th to watch it. All right, so we have a few major topics today. This is recapping all the news from Intel for the past year or so, especially this year. This includes the sort of dwindling down or potential death of at least some of the fabs, the inability to compete in the product side, which we've known about, the death spiral that it's sort of entering right now, and then the plan for what's next, at least according to Intel. There was also some interesting news as we moved to filming this piece, which is that US President Trump just floated the idea of 100% tariffs on semiconductors made by companies not manufactured in the US. This statement could help or hurt Intel. It's really not clear right now.
Yeah.
The help part's pretty obvious why that might be the case, because if you cannot have a 100% tariff by making it through Intel, then good for Intel.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if it causes complete chaos, or if TSMC is able to capitalize on that, because TSMC also is building fabs in the US right now, right next to Intel, then it might not help Intel that much. But that's not what we're focusing on today. That just kind of came down the pipe as we're putting the rest of this together. Most of this is about Intel handling its own problems, and we'll start with the death of the fabs. Fabs are fabrication plants for silicon. They are extremely high-tech. It is possibly the most advanced manufacturing on the planet. We've toured one of Intel's own in Arizona, including its neighboring construction site. Hopefully those finish. Otherwise, our documentary tour will just become useful B-roll for someone in the future documenting the end of Intel. That video is worth watching, though, if you want to learn how these places work. Same for all of them. In Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan's July 24th statement this year, titled Steps in the Right Direction, released alongside Intel's second quarter 2025 financial results, the newly appointed CEO declared, quote, "Going forward, our investment in Intel 14 Angstrom will be based on confirmed customer commitments. There are no more blank checks. Every investment must make economic sense. We will build what our customers need when they need it and earn their trust through consistent execution." And
Sounds good. But I think there is a but.
quote, Mr. Tan, laying off employees is one thing, but executing them is just taking it way too far.
Oh, come on.
I mean, I don't think we need to. Oh, that's not the kind of. The point stands. This is a huge change from how recent and now stepped down CEO Pat Gelsinger was running the company, where his approach appeared to be heavy investment into Intel technologies, heavy investment into fabs, spend money to try and catch up as best as possible, because Intel was and is so behind in certain areas that his approach seemed to be spend the money to try and fix it. And the fact.
Yep, and that's stupid. You have to get people in that are passionate to build something new. Now you can do that with money, but passionate people don't necessarily care about the money as much as they care about being able to do the things they are passionate about. So the money would probably not even have been, needed. You could have said, okay, build a completely new CPU structure, go wild, and then just let the engineers do the engineering. Well, you still, one group of engineers doing complete new stuff, and then you have engineers that work with the tech that's already there, getting that a little better. And still selling stuff. That might work. Definitely better than just throwing money around, because that leads likely to nothing. You have to have an actual goal. That's the thing. If everyone in the leaderboard in leadership is only money people, they don't understand. They don't understand what it takes to build something new. Technology wise. I mean, building a new company, of course, they know that, but yeah, it might be incompetence from the head that is killing Intel.
Fabs were his big project in particular. Tan is cutting everywhere possible, and these are opposing strategies. But interestingly,
Now, cutting money everywhere is a mistake. I wouldn't cut money in the engineering area because you need them to make new products and develop new technologies. You need them. So I would never cut there. Everything else, yes. Especially when it comes to marketing, because marketing doesn't matter if you don't have a product. You need a product to market. Otherwise, you have nothing to market, you know. If you can't, if you have the product that's worth anything for the customers, then they don't buy it. You might need to go to, yeah, it's late at your place, yeah. I know.
cutting the spend partway through the execution of a plan seems risky for new reasons. We think Tan's statement is extremely concerning for Intel. By pausing its 14A manufacturing process, Intel is giving up the race for cutting-edge process nodes, further reducing competition for the most technologically advanced foundries on the planet. It would just be TSMC now. Additionally, Intel's decision would likely cost it hundreds of millions in R&D and manufacturing facilities and equipment that may go unused. You could look at that and say, sunk cost fallacy, it's better to cut it now than to keep pouring money in. But no matter how you look at it at this point, there is waste being produced on one side or the other. Intel's announcement to pause 14A comes less than a month after Reuters reported on Intel allegedly exploring a shift into 14A, making Intel's drastic decision seem even more uncertain. Tan continued on, saying, quote, "We will take a fundamentally different approach to build our foundry business. Over the past several years, the company invested too much, too soon, without adequate demand," end quote. Gelsinger's approach appeared to be spend money to make money. It really looked that simple. And this is totally different. Prior to Tan, Intel had, under Gelsinger, fully embraced this IDM 2.0 strategy.
Well, the video is about 25 minutes longer than now. And depending on how much I react, you know, it might be way longer. We might be sitting here for a while.
This was a foundation.
But I would be up to it. Intel is worldwide. They have their seat in America, though. It's an American company.
Change that distinguished Intel's products division from Intel's foundry division and allowed the foundry to offer manufacturing services to fabless chip makers or designers and allowed the products division to outsource its manufacturing. Fabless chip makers or designers include NVIDIA, which has floated being a customer to Intel, and AMD. AMD actually used to own fabs, and not only that, its founder was once quoted as saying, quote, "Real men have fabs," end quote. AMD is now fabless. Under Gelsinger, the company continuously poured money into several fab construction projects and invested just as heavily into manufacturing and R&D. It's obviously not this straightforward, but we can kind of understand the logic behind, we tried, if you build it, they will come, under Gelsinger, and it didn't work. So now let's do the opposite and try cut all spending under this other guy who's just come in. But the problem is that they didn't build it. They poured the concrete slab.
What do you mean? What did he say? That's where Intel has everywhere sites or future sites. Wafer fabs, I don't know. Fabrication for something. Assembly tests. Advanced packaging. Okay. Future sites. These are gone. And this is being built slower.
continuously poured money into several fab construction projects and invested just as heavily into manufacturing and R&D. It's obviously not this straightforward, but we can kind of understand the logic behind we tried, if you build it, they will come under Gelsinger, and it didn't work.
Yeah, what he's saying is, oh yeah, we built this factory and then we will get customers. And then they tried to build a factory, no new customers, they're losing money, and the factory is not even done yet. Oh my god, we are losing money. And then a new guy came, and he stopped spending money. Not only that, he fires a lot of people, he tries to save money. The exact opposite of what the first guy did. And at the moment, it doesn't look like it's working out. Give me a second. I hear a fire alarm. Not good. Okay. Looks like someone burnt his food. Back to the video.
So now let's do the opposite and try cut all spending under this other guy who's just come in. But the problem is that they didn't build it. They poured the concrete slab and they brought the porta potties in for their future store. And then they said, hey, wait a minute. There's no customers yet. This isn't working. We better just stop now. So Intel is stuck between two.
This means they have spent a lot of money. Well, like this, building this here had cost a couple millions. Just building this here. It's not even finished. It's just not even the skeleton is finished. This has cost millions and millions to build. And now they stop, which means these millions and millions are gone. They're just gone. And that's just building it. Planning. That's also millions. Planning this, it took years to plan this and to get all the stuff that's needed. Oh my god. Yes, so many cranes. Yes. I remember in Berlin in the 90s. I think that was Berlin. It was the biggest construction site in Europe. Cranes everywhere. I remember they built something there. I don't remember what it was. But there were even more cranes. It was insane.
Extremes of maybe under and over investment. Some of these, again, are continuing. As far as we know, Arizona's moving forward. But Intel has publicly stated its plans to slow or stop construction elsewhere. Unfortunately, Intel could not have picked a worse time, we think, to finally change its mind on foundries. The company had already invested so much capital in its pivot into fabs and even began receiving taxpayer money from government-funded CHIPS Act payments at around $8 billion, down from 8.5 or so after long delays and Gelsinger throwing the US government under the bus for dragging its feet. And in addition to this, it had received promises from other countries around the world, and now it's decided it wants to change direction again, and all without ever giving the foundry a full chance to actually be complete and recoup the costs. Now, in some sense, these are a little...
Yep. So they spend money and they don't get anything back. Now, if they have gotten money from the government already, they might have to pay that back. I hope the government goes and says, yeah, give us the money back, because everything else would be stupid.
A bit disconnected in that there's a lot of money and it isn't all just in one giant money bucket, although I'm sure Intel wishes it were. They'd have to go to NVIDIA for that and ask Jensen to borrow some. But it's not all in one bucket. And so you could say, well, but they're still producing the fabs. They're still building the fabs in some of these locations. So They're still letting it get there. The thing is, though, we don't actually know that. We don't really know how far they're going to go with this at this point, because it's been non-stop cuts for like the last year now. Every month there's some big news, and I think everyone's just sort of waiting to hear what's next, what project gets the axe after this one. And it's like Intel went all in on a poker hand, and then they decided to just get up and leave the table and leave all the chips there and not even see what card turned over next. In the risk factors section of its 10Q SEC filing posted with the quarterly financials, Intel revealed its uncertainty and acknowledged the risks. This is standard for these filings. Intel said, quote, "If we are unable to secure a significant external foundry customer for Intel 14A, our next generation semiconductor manufacturing process technology, we may pause or discontinue our pursuit of next generation leading edge process technologies, which may have significant strategic business, financial, operational, and reputational risks and repercussions."
Oh my god. If Intel fails them, who is going to become the next big boy? AMD. AMD are already there. AMD has the best processors on the market. That's why Intel is suffering. They can't compete against AMD at this point. Now back 10 years and further of that, AMD was not good when it comes to CPUs. They were completely held up by the mid-tier graphics cards. And that was the only reason AMD could survive. And then Ryzen hit the market and it blew everyone away. That's how good these CPUs were. And with every generation, they got better. That's why if you buy a pre-built gaming or streaming PC, there's a 90% chance it has a AMD processor. A couple of years ago, it would have been Intel, but that's not the case anymore.
End quote. Yes, we could have told them that.
Thanks, Steve.
Intel acknowledged several other risks it would be subjected to if it paused or discontinued 14A, including the risk of products becoming dependent on TSMC, who Intel stated it would receive competitively disadvantaged pricing from. The risk of significant R&D and manufacturing losses, like we just talked about. The company pointed out over $100 billion in property, plant, and equipment net on the balance sheet in its Q2 2025 results, as we understand them, and stated it would likely discontinue fab construction in Ohio if 14A paused. The risk of being
if they don't get the new technology of them going, they will fail. They have to have new technology because the old one is not good enough. They can't compete anymore. That's the problem. They can't compete. They would only be able to compete if they basically bring out their what would be, a high-end processor, but for little money, like little money. So they wouldn't even make money on the processors anymore. That's how behind they are when it comes to technology. Oh my god. Yeah, the company might actually go down. Which would basically mean AMD has a monopoly, which would be bad. You never want a monopoly.
Required to repay government funding or fees for not satisfying certain construction and or wafer requirements in certain agreements, the risk of losing key talent and expertise, and the risk of limiting Intel Foundry's ability to attract external customers. And the company stated this as well, quote, "We've been unsuccessful to date in attracting significant customers to our external foundry business," end quote. And, quote, "If potential customers for our upcoming Intel 18A-P node believe we are no longer committed to continued development of next generation leading edge nodes, Intel 14A and beyond, they may be inclined to remain with their current foundry partners and unwilling to make the significant investments of time and resources needed to develop products on our nodes," end quote.
Yeah, why would they? Why would they try to develop on your technology if your technology is behind? Like, not just a little behind, but almost a decade behind. I mean, I haven't heard of any new technology that came out of the Intel CPU line. I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember. From AMD, it's almost every generation. At least every 2 years, AMD brings out some new technology for the processors. Intel, I haven't heard of anything in years. Now, I haven't been on a market for a new processor in years, but still, I'm still kind of, in the sphere. If I hear something, I hear something. But this is bad. This is really bad.
Quote, finally, the company affirmed that, quote, any decision to pause or discontinue our pursuit of Intel 14A and successor leading-edge process technologies may be effectively irreversible, end quote. Now, when we've seen foundries get stuck on nodes in the past, at least in the past 16 years, maybe only 10 of those, I've really been somewhat paying attention to it. Not necessarily competently, but I've been paying attention to it somewhat. In the last 16 years or so, the times I've seen companies get stuck on a node, it does seem like they really struggle to get unstuck, just because the cost is so enormous to compete, and as soon as someone pulls ahead, if they have too much of a lead, everyone becomes their customer, and it's too late. And we saw this with GlobalFoundries. GlobalFoundries got stuck on 14 nanometer and abandoned development of 7 and 5, as reported by Anantech, which is gone, and preserved by Level 1 Tech's forums. This has sort of happened before. If Intel actually were to abandon advanced nodes, we think it genuinely might be game over. They might be in an unrecoverable state. At that point, like the competition, it's going to be Taiwan's TSMC and probably whatever state-funded semiconductor manufacturer is the most successful in China, for example.
Yeah.
And beyond that, there's not a lot left. I mean, Samsung's making stuff. Of course, there's companies, SK Hynix, Micron, these makers of memory, makers of MOSFETs, ICs, things like that. They exist. GlobalFoundries still exists. But this sort of super high-tech CPU, GPU class silicon, there's not a lot of options out there. And Intel walking away from it, that's going to be eventually something that consumers will feel even more than they do now as well. It should be reassuring that...
Because that's kind of creating a monopoly, which means everything will get more expensive. We don't want that. We want Intel to succeed. Why? So there are more manufacturers, so they have to, fight things out on the price level. They can't just, oh yeah, this processor, this entry-level processor, $1,000. No one would buy that. Okay. Goodbye. Good night, Jesse. Yeah, this is bad. This is bad news.
Intel is at least aware in its risk statement of what it stands to lose, but we find it almost more concerning that the company understands that risk and is still considering taking it and pausing 14A. Laying off a quarter of the company again and stopping investment into 14A, it might reduce operating costs in a way that slows the bleeding. Maybe it helps with liquidity or something. But it's barely a drop in the bucket, we think, as people who aren't experts in like these multi-billion-dollar operations financially, but it just seems like a drop in the bucket compared to the potentially massive loss in the long run of just not being competitive anymore, even in fabrication. And this could be a death knell to Intel's fabs, we think, if they don't proceed carefully. Unless Lip-Bu-Tan can see something that nobody else can, this indicates a collapse, or in the very least, to quote Costanza, shrinkage of several significant arms of Intel's business. It doesn't look good, just like the shrinkage. And besides, the new CEO hasn't once given us the reassurance that only a parent can.
So kids, Papa's here.
Oh, how we miss his memes.
Jesus.
Tim, our news editor, tells me regularly how he misses having new Pat Gelsinger clips to pull from. Now, continuing in its push for short-term cash, Intel began breaking some of its business groups into smaller scale groups that it could sell off often while remaining an investor in them. In April, Intel sold its Altera business, a semiconductor solutions company, to Silver Lake while remaining a 49% owner. In June, it outsourced its marketing department and killed its automotive business the following week. In July, an Intel
Wait, they have what?
An owner. In June, it outsourced its marketing department and killed its automotive.
Intel will shut down its automotive business, lay off most of the departments. Why were they trying to produce cars? Are you stupid? Don't. This is one of the most stupid ideas I can imagine. Why would you try to get into a market that's completely saturated by a lot of brands already? And not just a lot of brands, a lot of manufacturers. Why would you even try? Oh, let me guess. Electronic cars. Still the same. Stop. That was a stupid idea.
Business the following week. In July, an Intel spokesperson informed the media, quote, "We plan to establish key elements of our networking and communications business as a standalone company, and we have begun the process of identifying strategic investors. Like Altera, we will remain an anchor investor, enabling us to benefit from future upside as we position the business for future growth," end quote. The telecommunications company Ericsson, seemingly most dependent on Intel's NEX group for the use of its radio access network, or RAN chips, appears most likely to invest in the now independent networking group. Intel also mentioned another sell-off, quote, "In line with Intel's commitment to strengthen its balance sheet and monetize non-core assets, the company sold, via a secondary offering, 57.5 million of net Class A shares of Mobileye in July 2025, adding approximately $922 million to the balance sheet. Intel remains the majority shareholder in Mobileye and continues to have strong conviction in its long-term growth opportunity," end quote. According to its balance sheet, Intel raised its current cash assets by $1.4 billion in the first 2 quarters of 2025, despite losing roughly $4 billion in current total assets. Now, if that business decisions, they look bad, it's kind of like a flailing, panicked slow down, shut down, sell off of anything they can find in the company. They're flipping couches over right now, digging through the cushions. Maybe they'll take the coffee and the free bananas away again. But currently it feels like there's no real map marker for where Intel is going. They just know they need to try and stop spending money. And to really understand how much Intel is cutting spending in every possible sector, it helps to rapidly recap some of the layoffs. Last year, Intel laid off around 15,000 people and even cut the free coffee and bananas, as referenced earlier. But it
cutting $10 billion in spending. Whoa, that's so much money. What you can do with so much money. Oh my God.
1,000 people and even cut the free coffee and bananas, as referenced earlier. But it has since resumed that part. More than 15,000 people left, though. It's somewhere between 15 and 20,000, as we understand it, with a lot of people leaving voluntarily. Intel internally offered, as we understand it, voluntary departure, where people could take whatever deals they may have had for leaving the company and get out early without being officially laid off. And that would have affected the publicly reported number for layoffs at that time. The company hasn't stopped bleeding employees for over a year now, though. So for 2025, on July 7th, layoffs began for 696 employees in Chandler, Arizona. July 11th, 398 employees were laid off in Folsom, California. On the 15th, Intel laid off 953 employees across 6 Santa Clara offices, 2,392 across 4 Oregon campuses, and 110 from Austin, Texas, totaling 3,455 employees laid off in a single day. The following day, Intel announced 227 more layoffs, impacting its facility in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Oregon took the biggest hit, making up over half of the recent layoffs, and by recent we mean like a month ago, impacting 2,392 employees across 4 facilities. Oregon was also the only state to include a detailed list of the positions of those laid off. According to the listing, the employees most impacted were engineers and technicians working in modules, followed by those in process integration and yield, which Intel really shouldn't be screwing with right now, but I guess we've forgotten about the oxidation problem. Out of the 2,392 layoffs in Oregon,
Intel has an oxidation problem with their processors? Really? Oh God, that's... Why?
there were 412 module equipment technicians, 307 module development engineers, 148 module engineers, 92 process integration development engineers, 55 yield development engineers, and 49 process integration and yield technicians. There were also a total of 10 VPs from the Oregon campuses affected by layoffs in various departments. Now, some of these are management jobs, and when Lip-Bu Tan joined, That's what he said. He said he'd get rid of middle management layers. We reported on that.
That's good. Middle management costs a lot of money and doesn't produce anything.
But a lot of the ones we just read, they are not management jobs. They are manufacturing jobs and engineering jobs. And manufacturing jobs specifically are the very jobs that Intel promised the United States government when it took the $8 billion of taxpayer money from the CHIPS Act to build fabs. The whole thing was it's going to, as they like to say to governments, quote, create jobs. And that was when Intel was promising a $100 billion investment in total in its US-based silicon facilities.
They wanted to spend $100 billion. That's so much money. Oh God, is that so much money? Oh God. That's a lot of money.
These weren't unexpected layoffs, though.
Should have given me that money. I would have done something useful with it.
CEO Lip-Bu Tan, who comes from Cadence, the company recently in the news for pleading guilty to violating U.S. export controls while Lip-Bu Tan was CEO of Cadence, has continuously expressed the need to streamline Intel's internal processes since being appointed. In his April 24th statement to shareholders titled Our Path Forward, Tan stated, quote, "We are seen as too slow, too complex, and too set in our ways, and we need to change. That's why I'm proud to announce our new Intel Crime Fab. We will fabricate criminal charges in exchange for money, and the fines will always be lower than the amount we..." Oh wait, no, I misread that. That's actually not what that says. It's not even close. I don't know how that got in there. That's weird. It says something about vital changes for the companies. Maybe he's changed how things operate under him. These mainly consisted of empowering engineers, whatever that means, and downsizing the team for cost and streamlining purposes, and returning to office. Surely that's the part that'll fix this. Tan also ended with his hopes to, quote, "pull off a comeback that will be studied in business schools for generations to come," end quote, which seems very bold to say so early. It's sort of like if you're about to do a sick jump, and you say to your friend, "watch this." In the statement, Tan described how, quote, "many of the changes we will be driving are designed to make engineers more productive by removing burdensome workflows and processes that slow down the pace of innovation," end quote. He also stated,
and then they fire all the engineers. Oh.
quote, "I've been surprised to learn that in recent years, the most important KPI for many managers at Intel has been the size of their teams. Going forward, this will not be the case. I'm a big believer in the philosophy that the best leaders get the most done with the fewest people. We will embrace this mindset across the company, which will include empowering our top talent to make decisions and take greater leadership of key priorities," end quote. And
I kind of agree, because if the size of the team determines, I don't know, how much or how good a manager does his work, I mean, that's dumb. Only because you have a lot of people doesn't mean the work is good. I mean, there's a saying, too many cooks. I don't know the word for braai in English, but they ruin it. And that I think that's going on here.
its most recent quarterly report, Intel announced plans to reduce, quote, "headcount by approximately 15%, end quote, and, quote, end the year with a global workforce of about 75,000 employees as a result of workforce reductions and attrition," end quote. Something about this is familiar to about 24 years ago. For reference, the last time Intel had 75,000 employees that we could find recorded, or fewer than that, was in 1999, the same year it released the Pentium 3. In 2025, Intel started the year with 99,500 employees in its core workforce, so Tan's end goal would ultimately reduce Intel's headcount by about a quarter or so, or 25,000 people in a single year. Intel also ended projects in Wrocław, Poland, where it had expected to create 2,000 Intel jobs, and in Magdeburg, Germany, where 3,000 Intel jobs were expected, but are now gone. Additionally, Intel decided to shrink the assembly and test operations in Costa Rica, where it employed over 3,400 people. An Intel spokesperson told The Verge that over, quote, 2,000 Costa Rica employees should remain to work in engineering and corporate, end quote, so the site will see a reduction of around 1,400 jobs. In Intel's Q2 report, the company listed 96.4 thousand employees in its so-called core workforce. globally, meaning 3,100 layoffs had occurred in the first half of the year. As we understand it, all of the recent layoffs occurred after June 28th. This is also seemingly for W-2s. We're not exactly sure how 1099s or contractors would be affected here. So the recent layoffs being after June 28th would be when Intel recorded its second quarter data, meaning the current employee count is likely significantly lower than the 96.4 thousand listed and won't be reflected until the next filing. That brings us to the product side. We're going to keep this short since most of you already know how bad Intel's product side has been for the last several generations of CPU. Intel's product division has been unable to provide any support or relief for the company. It's launched one bad CPU after another, crushed the company's reputation with monumentally inept responses to the oxidation and voltage instability and degradation issues on the 13th and the 14th gen. Intel has not only outperformed at every single price class with its Core Ultra series versus AMD's desktop CPUs, it has faltered in its fabrication and design abilities in a way that harmed enterprise relationships. Found via WC.
It's almost like they try to kill the company. If they would come out, yeah, we done fucked up. There won't be a new CPU release this year. We are focusing on complete new technology for in 2 years to release something great then. But I think the company would go bankrupt then if they do that.
CCF Tech, large German PC component retailer Mindfactory, which has problems of its own, shared its CPU sales from July, highlighting the extent of AMD's lead in the current desktop CPU market. According to the Post, AMD...
Did you read that? Mindfactory sales stats reveal AMD maintains its over 90% CPU share in Germany. Amazon US also shows how Intel failed to even enter the top 10 best-selling CPUs. Holy cow! This is big. I mean, back in the day, that was the other way around. 90+% were Intel. But that shows you, if you slack off because you are the big fish in in the pond, you get eaten.
Highlighting the extent of AMD's lead in the current desktop CPU market. According to the Post, AMD sold over 12,500 CPUs to Intel's 1,100, resulting in a 92 to 8% split in market share by new units sold, and a split in revenue closer to 94 to 6%. We checked our own affiliate data, and we can confirm that most of our viewers are buying AMD. It varies, but typically it's above 80%.
Yeah, to be fair, I would buy AMD too, because I haven't heard anything positive about Intel in years. And these processors, I only hear positive things about them. Like, that's literally what's going on here. Intel bad, AMD good. The exact opposite what it was when before Ryzen. Before Ryzen, everyone wanted Intel. Even while Ryzen Generation 1, people were still, Intel is better for gaming. Because they had faster core clocks that made them better in gaming. But AMD got faster and better, and now they are just better than Intel in general. It seems like it's not even close.
Of new CPUs sold. On Amazon, the top 25 best-selling CPUs consist of 19 AMD processors to 6 Intel processors at the time we wrote this. Not to mention, 4 out of the 5 Intel Core Ultra processors that are listed on Amazon are currently discounted below their MSRP, further emphasizing Intel's inability to compete with AMD's current...
Oh my god. So has the Intel processor 16 cores? 8P? The P might stand for physics, I don't know. Cores plus 16 E cores? What does that mean? AMD Ryzen, 8 cores, 16 threads. I can understand that. But Intel, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Curious. But just when, let's say they have the same amount of cores. I guess the E cores are the threads. You know, that so they are having the same cores, the same threads. AMD is tacted lower. But well, we have seen the charts, so the processor will be faster in actual applications, and it costs less. So why would I buy Intel? Why would I? Why would I buy that? I have no reason to buy Intel if I have a Ryzen with the same cores that is just better in everything and cheaper on top of that. Why would I not take the AMD processor over Intel? Wait, oh, this thing has 24 cores. Oh, it has 28 cores. Nice. But is it faster than this one? I don't know. I would look that up and then make a decision, which I won't do now. I'm just talking. But yeah, if I had to decide between these two, I would look up how they are. I mean, they are being tested dozens of times, both of them. I can just Google, I can go on YouTube and just search them up and have them. It's easy. I would make my decision based on that. And I would likely still go with the AMD at the end. Even if it performs, let's say this performs 5% worse than this one. That's nothing. For that price? But then it's 5%. Well, at the end, it depends on your use case. Back to the video.
Generation of desktop offerings, even with the marked down price of its processors. Now, Intel makes more than just desktop CPUs, but that's okay because it's also getting killed in things like handhelds, so that leaves basically laptops. Despite current struggles, Intel has long held the lion's share of the CPU market and continues to maintain it.
This has changed massively. I mean, this is just February 2024 to July 2025. This used to be about almost 90% Intel. Wow, they have lost so much market share. This is insane.
By just worldwide usage. However, AMD is outselling Intel in our category for desktop and will eventually chip away at the market share total. And ultimately, holding share from old CPUs doesn't make Intel new money, which is what it needs. So currently, it looks like Intel's goals right now are to cut costs and maybe improve short-term cash flow or be a little more positive on cash flow where possible. For the time being, Intel might have enough room to keep its head above water, but this is a situation where the water is still rising. And so this strategy, it really only works a couple times before you're out of things you can sell and cut. Like at some point you exhaust all those options. So unless Tan's approach relies on laying off another 25,000 in 2026, we're not exactly sure where the end game is. It takes a really long time for these companies to make even a CPU, to bring it through design to production. Then it has to be competitive. And so even just the window on making hopefully competitive products in the CPU space, that's a pretty long window. GPU, we know they are price competitive, but from as far as we understand, they are either making unbelievably small amounts of money or are potentially negative on some of those sales. So it's not looking good for Intel. AMD once had its own hard times, though. So It is
Yes.
possible to recover. AMD did it. You look at them today, they are doing amazingly. But there was a period where AMD was close to bankruptcy. Shortly after buying ATI, AMD nearly went bankrupt. It owed a lot of money to a lot of people, and it even had to sell its offices and then lease them back. So it lost that asset of the buildings, burned them in favor of a short-term cash injection from the sale. That probably looked like its own death spiral. It took about a decade after that for AMD to begin to become the company that it is today. It clearly worked, but there were a lot of moments where AMD was make or break. And in fact, in our own interview with AMD's engineering team, we were previously told that AMD, quote, bet the company, end quote, on Zen. Now, AMD at that time,
I can completely believe that. Completely. And it worked out. The leadership went, okay, balls to the wall. We need an insanely good product. Or we are done anyway. So let's make this insanely good product. And they did. And they won. And now we are here. they are crushing it. Good for them. They could have failed. But they didn't. They didn't. They put something out that was competitive to a very competitive price. And that's why they succeeded. And then the next generation after that was even better. And then the generation after that was even better. That's the thing. Their CPU is getting better and better. It's insane. And the same is now happening with their graphics card. They're getting better and better. That's why if everything goes right and I'm monetized at the end of this year, beginning next year, I want to buy a new streaming computer. And that will be completely AMD again. And I wanna apparently the next generation of the graphics card that will be the 10,000 something, whatever. Gonna be good for rendering, aka better said streaming and encoding, stuff like that. So if they get that in check, I mean, for gaming, they're already fine. They're already there. But if they get the encoding for streams, good. Nvidia might be in trouble. But we will see. We will see.
time was really scrappy, and there wasn't a whole lot of corporate structure left once they were at that point. Even today, on our side, just on the press side, working with AMD versus working with Intel, it is unbelievable how different they are. I mean, Intel, if we wanted to talk to literally any employee there, the amount of people that request would have to go through, and then the answer that would get filtered back down, it's nothing like AMD. AMD, I can like email a guy and get his answer, and that's kind of it. So, and that's just on the press side. It just kind of gives you a picture of.
That's, by the way, very good that the AMD is run that way. Because that saves a lot of money. It's as simple as that. And the thing is, he probably emails a guy that is in charge and knows what can be getting out when it comes to information and what not. He has to know this to make the decision, and he makes a decision. Not like Intel, where you have the person you get in direct contact with has no idea what's going on, so he gives it up, and then it goes further and further until someone is reached that knows what's going on, and then it comes back, which takes time. It can take weeks because big companies are slow.
How the companies operate culturally, so it's a totally different mindset. And for Intel to recover, just my own opinion, I feel like Intel needs that scrappier startup mindset, and the GPU side has that. But obviously the GPU side is not enough to sustain Intel. So like they need to get some of that over to the CPU side and maybe the foundry side and have
Yes.
more of that.
I agree.
I don't know, like just less, like they care more, less corporate, less bullshit. And maybe some of what Tan is doing will help with that. But one thing that it doesn't help with is morale. And that
Oh,
could
yeah.
be damaging. So anyway, Intel, in the very least, looking back at all this whole report, the one takeaway we have reading Intel's own words is that, and this is what, if Gordon Ma-Un were able to join for this and we ran our piece, is Intel actually screwed? I think, at the end of that conversation, my answer to that piece would be that without a customer for 14A, Intel is screwed. And I'm pretty confident that his answer would also be that right now it looks like Intel is screwed. And then
I'm with that. Yes, they have to get the technology going, and no, they have to get the custom for the 14 something going and develop the 18 something. Oh, if they don't do that, they're done. Unless they kind of stop anything processors, fire everyone, maybe except the engineers, and focus completely on the graphics cards. But I don't see that. The thing is, the technology behind the graphics card seems to be good, but they aren't there yet with all the performance, and of course, which also is with the drivers. It's a mix between the hardware isn't 100% there, but the drivers are even worse. But the drivers are getting there. That's why you have performance jumps, which are quite significantly, at least what I have heard. So yeah, they can do it, but
he'd have some positive side of maybe they can fix it. And maybe they can. AMD did it. That's probably the best indicator we have that is possible. Whether Intel can do it, we don't know. They're totally different people running the companies. So we'd like to believe that Lip-Bu Tan is playing some kind of 5D galaxy brain chess that none of us are intelligent enough to understand, and it'll just like work out great. But obviously, things are looking very grim for Intel at the moment. But it's not just Intel that it's looking grim for. Even the CEO looks like he's got some hard times ahead.
Oh,
U.S.
boy.
President Donald Trump called for Lip-Bu Tan to resign just a couple days ago. Trump stated, quote, "Lip-Bu Tan is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. There's no other solution to this problem," end quote. This is coming from the
Oh,
guy
boy.
who, like a week ago, said he didn't know who Jensen Huang was, by the way. So, like, putting a spotlight like this
well, I don't neither. So whatever.
on a specific guy in the industry, well, I mean, you can look at their stock price. It had an effect. Intel stock, at least briefly, went down immediately in response to that comment.
I said, who the hell is he? What's his name? His name is Jensen Huang, NVIDIA. I said, what the hell is NVIDIA? I've never heard of it before.
But the U.S. government, it's not a non sequitur ad in here because it's actually pretty critical to this.
Oh, Donald.
Intel is big enough, even now, and its fabrication capabilities are so rare, and it's an American company. All of these things matter to the U.S. government because Intel has a specific, I'm sure, national security interest for the U.S. government.
Yes, 100%. The US government doesn't want Intel to go bankrupt. They need the technology.
And it just, you don't want to say too big to fail because we've seen how that works out. And it's not good for everybody else. Although it was for the banks, but that was a different story. But
That were the
in this
banks.
case, it does seem like Intel is, the US government has an interest in keeping Intel as at least a majority held US company that maintains its manufacturing capabilities. It just seems like they would want that in the same way that
Yes.
the US government will bail out other companies it views as important for one reason or another to the country. And so that is important. We don't know how it plays in. I have absolutely no idea. But as far as Intel and from the consumer side, we are definitely, it's like the come on, do something meme with the stick and the poking the
Yeah.
thing. Right now, the stage we're at for Intel is that meme, and we are poking Intel with the stick, hoping that it moves or does something. That's where we're at with Intel. So that's it for
What would be funny if the graphics card division comes out with something that blows everyone's mind. That's competitive with AMD and Nvidia and to a reasonable price. That would be insane. That would be insane. I can see people then buy that graphics card in droves if it's good.
this report on Intel and what looks like a collapse, at least right now. I mean, genuinely, hopefully they turn it around. At the same time, if they can't, then I don't fuck them. Like, someone else has got to come in and do it. The problem is these fab projects, you can't just be any startup and do it. You need billions of dollars and unbelievable talent. So it'll have a consumer effect downstream. We just don't know what it's going to be if they go under. And consumer side CPU and GPU is basically all coming from TSMC, maybe a little bit of Samsung, then that's going to be reflected in prices for sure at the consumer level. But we'll see how that pans out. Anyway, that's it for this report. We will keep you updated on Intel. And as always, subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersaccess.net to support us and our ability to spend time compiling this stuff, doing all the research and aggregation of all the information. And you can grab one of these brand new shirts. This is for our upcoming Black Market GPU video, where we were able to find smugglers for mostly NVIDIA high-end AI GPUs, bringing them into China, where they are supposed to be banned for sale from U.S. companies to China. And the shirt says Zheng Yijian, B-Yijian, which is open one eye, close one eye.
That's what it's about?
An idiom that was said by multiple people in our deep dive into this story when we asked them, do you think NVIDIA knows? And the answer effectively translated to, turn a blind eye. Check back for that video. That goes up August 15th, and you can go to store.gamersaccess.net to grab this shirt or one of our many other items for the launch of the video. Subscribe for more. We'll see you all next time.
Okay, we gonna watch that documentary when it comes out.
Intel's in free fall.
Stop it. Good video.